veterans with PTSD. Pray for this coronavirus to come to us with, and pray for our elders, all community members suffering with terminal illnesses. And with that, we'll say the Holy Father's prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Thank you. Item 3, the adoption of the agenda. Floor is open for motion. Motion made by Gary for adoption of the agenda. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Alvin Swingle. Roll call when you're ready, Connie.
Okay. Okay. Terry,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Alan S.,
Yes.
Dr. Wanda,
Yes.
Alan.
Yes. Yeah, item C, old business, which is now move on to item D, new business. Item 1 is approved quote from Poplar's Music for an amount of $20,047.24. Mr. Lattiser?
Attached to the quote from Poplar's Music, an amount of $20,047.24. These instruments were used by students for distance learning. The recommendation to approve utilizing CARES Act funds.
Okay, at this time, the floor is open
I'll
for a
move.
motion. Motion made by Gary. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Kurt. Is there any discussion on it? If not, roll call. You ready, Connie?
Okay, Dr. Wanda,
Yes.
Alan S.,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Alan.
Yes. Item 2.
Thank you.
Item 2 is approval of the annual compliance report for Nova School District number 7. Mr. Fletcher.
Okay, before you, you have the certificates of compliance of all of the schools within the district. In addition to that, you have the one for the district-wide, that's the district-wide LEA. And what that encompasses is on an annual basis, you certify that you will abide by these compliances listed. And primarily there are 6 and there are others to follow, but the main 6 are, of course, to ensure that the teachers have valid teaching licenses, the teachers are highly qualified, the curriculum pre-K through 12 meets all requirements as set forth in the Century Code. Background checks are provided pre-K through 12, and there is an annual review process, which of course we have. In addition to that, if you go through the form, there are other items that are mentioned that we abide by and we follow. And as a public school district on an annual basis, you're required to certify that you will abide by this certificate of compliance. The recommendation is to approve as presented.
Okay, at this time, the floor is open for a motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Kurt and seconded by Gary. Is there any discussion? Kurt?
No.
Alvin Swingle?
No, sir.
Mr. Nass? Gary? Mr. Davis?
No.
Dr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Is there any, do you have any discussion on this? Do you have any discussion on this item?
No, I don't.
Okay, roll call, Connie?
Okay, Kurt,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Alan S.,
Yes.
Dr. Wanda,
Yes.
Alan.
Yes. Next item is the permission to hire an elementary school teacher, Shannon McLeod.
Yep, good evening, board president and board members. In your packet or on your screen, you'll find that we asked for permission to hire an elementary school teacher. And with the interview process and the qualification process, we would like to recommend and move forward to recommend Julia Davis for the elementary school teacher, utilizing our general fund.
Okay, motion made by Kurt.
I'll
On the
second.
recommendation of Julia Davis, second by Gary. Is there any discussion? Kurt?
No.
Ellen?
No.
Ross?
No.
Gary?
No.
Patty?
No.
Dr. Lattiser?
No.
Roll call.
Okay.
Carmen?
LNS,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Dr. Wanda,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Alan.
Yes. Item 4, discussion on DFC policy, reassignment policy. Who's taking this, Dr. Thomas or?
I can start
Mr.
and then Mr. Patra and Mr. LaValle can add if needed. So this discussion is regarding the reassignment policy, and as you can see in your board docs, number 5 states a potential change of employees temporarily reassigned will not be subject to salary change unless directed by the superintendent. The reason for this change for consideration is because, excuse me, we are in the process of reassignment of our staff due to COVID, such as bus drivers. It could be paraprofessionals, but we don't want to penalize them with that reassignment by having to change their pay. Thus, the addition to this policy. Mr. Patra, do you have anything to add on that?
Nope, that's correct. Something we've mentioned before, and this goes in line with, as we mentioned before, the way we fund the bus driver positions typically is a large portion comes from reimbursement for mileage. And then when we're actually engaged in virtual learning, there's no mileage accumulating, so then there is no reimbursement the following year. So the recommendation, I believe, is that we would reassign them to different areas in the school while we're operating in a virtual capacity.
Mr. LaValle, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, well said.
Okay, somebody, it's just already policy, we already added 5?
Yep, it's 5 that's being added before, I believe. This was presented by Mr. LaValle, and what changed, of course, at the time, I guess we didn't think of this, is item 4 was added, I think, back in June. If reassigned, the employee's job title, salary, funding will change to the reassigned position. In this case, we're not wanting to make drastic permanent changes. We just want to go forth with a temporary assignment.
Okay, no, it's just the first reading, and it's a change to the policy.
I believe at this point, we're going to ask for a final read because this would likely go into effect within the week for the bus drivers.
Usually it's always the first reading, and then
Yep.
it comes back to the final reading.
And then, like I said, in this case, especially during the times where there's no transportation, the drivers would need to be reassigned. Again, our fault, something that we should have probably caught beforehand when it was presented the first time, but we did not.
Any other questions from the board?
When they're reassigned, will they be paid out of that different program that they're reassigned to then?
Here's
And
that.
then we have,
And likely it's going to be CARES Act.
Yes.
CARES Act dollars.
And at this point, it also might be food service because the intention, of course, is I believe it was reported back to the board that in August that the direction the reimbursement program was going is that we would only get food reimbursement for the students that were enrolled in school. Okay, since August now, that has just recently changed in the last maybe 10 days, 2 weeks, to where we're able to provide food for all the children. Then in turn, our reimbursement is going to go up.
However, I need to interject, Mr. Fletcher. There was an administrative meeting today, and the discussion held on the fact that most students are already receiving meals, whether it's the Head Start, it's the Ojibwa School, it's Dunseith Public. And so they did make the determination that they would deliver to enrolled students. So they've chosen not to do the summer lunch program because they believe most of our students are fed by the schools that are attending already. That was just today. We've been so busy, I didn't get a chance to touch base with him on
that
that.
include administration and teachers and
Are we
staff too?
talking about meals?
Yeah.
Of course, they have to follow the collective bargaining agreement through the Bureau and whatever agreements we have with our
I
teachers.
think it's $4 per meal, any staff.
Yes, $4 per meal.
But they are also ensuring that they carry additional meals on the bus if there are smaller children within the house, and considering that an incidental benefit, but a very small amount. what we incurred, we were running, I think we did some data and it was approximately 26 to 29,000 meals, including breakfast and lunch we were distributing a week. And our high school kitchen staff were struggling because they thought, it seemed as though some were collecting meals within the drop-off sites as well as coming to pick them up. And so we feel confident that most of our students are being fed through their respective schools. And so they want to proceed with the delivery so they can actually run the bus routes, which has been arranged already. So every enrolled child will get a meal.
So as of right now, we're not collecting mileage, meaning that the kids aren't in school from the state?
No,
No, but I can also assure you that we're working with the bureaus, so the bureau buses will be the ones that are driven as they are still maintaining their transportation dollars. And district bus drivers will be the riders with them on those buses.
Bureau bus driver.
Bureau will drive bureau buses as well to assist with the potential loss of transportation dollars will incur through distance learning.
Cap question. So why would we change it if we're going to be reimbursed, fully reimbursed if we fed everybody? Why would we change that back to only enrolled students? Because I mean, you're gonna have kids that maybe are, how would you say, not over the age of 18, but aren't enrolled in school. And the younger ones, like 3, 4-year-olds, 2-year-olds, that we could be providing meals for and being reimbursed.
Well, we did pose that question, and what the struggle is actually documenting it. We can't, with buses going to separate locations as well as picking them up. So the food service at the high school cannot, assure that they're not delivering a second or third meal to a person. And so it's the accountability piece that the Department of Public Instruction is really tightening up on. When COVID started, they were much more lenient in how we distribute meals, but they are tightening up those reins quite a bit. And as far as accountability, we're struggling to find a way how to do that. Does that make sense?
Well, it kind of does, but still, yeah, I mean, it didn't answer my question because, I mean, we can provide meals for everybody. And like you said, we're gonna reassign bus drivers, we're gonna assign teachers. So wouldn't we be able to keep track of that now better because we're gonna have a full staff versus just the lunch staff?
The discussion we had is when we find a better tracking system and that we're hoping to do a real-time system so that they can actually electronically maintain who is receiving what meals. But we've exhausted our kitchen staff at all 3 areas because they are providing an extreme amount of meals. And it's my understanding that the state won't be as forgiving. Would you agree?
that's what we've been told.
So that's the concern, because if we distribute 26 to 29,000 meals a week, we may not get reimbursed for that because of the accountability piece.
So Travis, isn't there a database that we can put together and send them on the buses on a tablet? And just check off, like, I mean, they do it in the stores. Wouldn't we be able to do that with the meals? Have a tablet on each bus and a column for each meal?
That's not something you would be able to create on the fly. I mean, you'd have to look at purchasing something like that in a database. And that's a pretty special type of inventory system you're talking about. And you'd have to not only record them, but you'd have to flag them somehow still that they received the meal. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's possible for sure, but we don't have anything right now that currently would be available to do that, not in the school.
But it's something we could create.
I don't know if you'd be able to create it, but it's something you'd have to look at purchasing. I mean, a database isn't something that, like I said, it involves, more detail than it's bigger than just like a spreadsheet or something, so.
And you were on that call today too, right, Travis? And I understand about
Well, we should have a database for that, because then we're accounting for the food that we have that we're purchasing versus the food that's going out.
And we have our databases within the school, our student information system, but the Bureau doesn't allow for third-party interfaces, so you couldn't interface with some type of scanning system that would go out on the buses and track that, you know what I mean? You can't, they don't allow for that, so you would pretty much be creating something from scratch, some type of database from scratch, yeah. And then interfacing with whatever you're gonna use, iPads or whatever mobile devices, and it takes some work and a few people to create something like that, but I guess moving forward, something we can definitely look at doing, I don't know. But my first option would be to see what's available at what cost, because it might be cheaper and a lot quicker to see what's available to buy
versus trying to create something that's, you know.
And the high school took the brunt of it. The food service staff was so exhausted at that time, and so, we're trying to, I get where you're coming from. If we can feed more kids, I think we're all in agreement there. But right now, the struggle is to ascertain how do we ensure we're delivering those meals to the right kids and only one time. So we can look into that for sure.
But you did mention that you'd be serving like the underage kids also, so there really isn't anybody else other than dropouts or that would be home, those kind of things.
Perhaps, yes. The summer lunch program would run from ages, is it 2 to 18 or 20 with those with a disability? And so they are preparing some additional meals for that, but there really is no reason we should be doing 26 to 29,000, and my fear is we won't be reimbursed for that large amount. So that's just the discussion that happened today. Now that's through distance learning. That's if we're even going to continue distance learning after the 6 weeks, we can come back and have that discussion and maybe look into some possibilities.
And something to keep in mind with your accountability, if you're looking at a system like that, like Michelle mentioned briefly, it's got to be real time. Like we can, send out a group of people on a bus, get a list of names, but do we have the time to bring that list back to the school and cross-reference it with another list before another bus goes out to deliver and delivers a second meal to those same individuals? You see what I'm saying?
Or even
That's
a
why it has to be real timing, that when I enter this person's name in a database, for example, or on my mobile device, it should automatically tell me this person just received a meal 5 minutes ago.
From a different bus.
From a different bus or a
Yeah.
different location. That would be real time, and that's something that component is a lot more extensive than what the person thinks, to create something like that. So.
And also during the springtime, we kind of co-op with other schools as they were doing the summer lunch program, and none of them were doing it now. So we know every enrolled student has to be reached. So if we have to go to St. John to drop off that meal to that student, so it's going to be also more time consuming for us because Dundee Public, St. John Public, none of them are doing the summer lunch program.
Any other questions? No more. Now, you can use the salaries for the bus drivers or whoever's delivering the food. Can we collect mileage for that? Or we're gonna get from the state and from the CARES Act?
No. The mileage that we were reimbursed for is only for the transportation of students. We checked into that last spring.
Transporting the students,
Yes,
but we're transporting food to the
Yep.
students.
and that was a no.
And that's why, the Bureau is going to use the Bureau buses for that.
If no further discussion, I'll ask for, you want a motion on this
Wait,
to?
So basically, this is just for like the reassignment of temporary staff for like the COVID.
Yes.
Yeah, just open floor for a motion for number 5 to the reassignment, description code DFC.
I so move.
Okay, motion made by Al, and is there a second by Ross. Now this, it's for the final read too, Al. Right?
Yes.
Ross?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Not roll call, you ready, Connie?
I'm sorry, I missed who made the motion.
I did.
Alan.
Okay.
Second by Ross.
Okay. Okay, Ross,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Dr. Wanda,
Yes.
Alan S.,
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Alan.
Yes. Item 5, recommendation by supervisor to conflict discharge, Ms. Dr. Thomas.
Okay, Mr. President and board members, at this time, I'm making the recommendation to contemplate the discharge of Ronnie Marsley from her current contract for 1, conduct unbecoming a teacher, 2, insubordination, and/or 3, failure to perform contracted duties without justification. And at this time, our attorney, Rachel Bruner, is present to go over the procedure with you all. Rachel?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Dr. Thomas. So we've been through these types of meetings in the past. I want to remind everybody in the room that we can't discuss the facts or allegations during today's meeting, besides listing the reasons found in the North Dakota statute upon which the recommendation is made. The discussion regarding any evidence if taken out of the actual hearing can't be discussed or brought forward to the board at this time. This is strictly a meeting to contemplate the discharge of Ms. Marcellet. The actual discharge hearing would occur later, where she would have a right to present her side of the evidence as well and address the board, and that's when the decision would be whether or not to actually discharge her. So today, the discussion should be limited to the sole question: do the causes given that Dr. Thomas laid out, those 3 causes, conform with the requirements of North Dakota Century Code 15.1-1507? I think that was in your board docs, that Century Code. In this case, the 3 reasons she listed are all statutory reasons that you can discharge someone. So the answer to that question should be yes. So without inquiry into substantiation of the grounds, the board should vote by roll call upon a motion. And should someone wish to make a motion, I think you have sample motion language in your board docs as well that you can use. If anyone has questions about the procedure, that's the reason I'm here today, but we can't get into the evidence.
At this time, does any board members have any questions for this?
I do.
Harry?
Rachel, so.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we get, so you're saying that there are only questions regarding the statute and not any of the evidence?
Correct.
Okay, so.
Right.
So now, have we gone through this before on this particular person with the same charges?
This recommendation was made by Dr. Dakota maybe almost a year ago, if I remember correctly. All I'll say is that without getting into the evidence again, there was additional information that has since happened, which is why the superintendent now is making the recommendation again. But again, I can't get into the specifics because this isn't a hearing, and if I present the district side of the evidence, that's not fair to Ms. Marzulli.
Of course, but they're the same charges, correct? With addition.
The same statutory reasons?
Yes.
Yes, but the allegations and the evidence would be different.
Anything else, Terry?
No.
Ross, anything? Ellen? Good. Right.
I'm just in the blind about this, about what's happened. Like, they just said there was a time frame over a year ago. But I know you can't discuss it, but I'm just at loss for what's going on.
A year ago, there was a motion to put her back to work.
I make a motion.
Sure.
to not contemplate.
Right, it was, I think I printed off the board minutes from back then, so let me see what I have for a date. I want to say it was in October of 2019 that a recommendation was made by Dr. Dakota for the board to contemplate the discharge of the same individual. And at that time, we didn't get into a discussion then either, if I remember correctly. But at that time, the board voted not to contemplate. Something has since happened, which has required the superintendent to again bring it back before the board. I don't like the fact that we can't get into the evidence where you are supposed to, make a decision whether to contemplate someone's discharge and set up the hearing process without getting the evidence ahead of time. But that is the process, and that's supposed to be so because it's the most fair to the individual teacher. Where if I'm going to talk about what evidence we have against her, it's not fair for her to wait until a hearing to be able to present her evidence. And so and you're not supposed to hear any of the evidence until the actual hearing, because you all become the actual, judge and jury, essentially. You're the ones making the decision at that discharge hearing of whether to actually discharge her or not. So all the way prior to that hearing, you're supposed to, try to remain impartial and not know all the evidence and the facts. At the actual discharge hearing, if it gets to that point, there would be an administrative law judge that would handle the procedural steps that's required by Century Code. At school boards hire an administrative law judge to handle to handle the evidence at the hearing, what's gonna be able to put in. They set it up for the date. They coordinate with the school's attorney and the individual or the individual's attorney if they have one. And then it's essentially like a really mini informal trial almost. But the rules of evidence do apply at that. And so they're, which is another reason we can't get into evidence now, because a judge might say we, didn't introduce it correctly and things. But so that's the process. It's difficult for boards to have to, make a decision whether to contemplate someone's discharge without knowing much about it, but that is the requirement. She still has a contract until that hearing, and you make your final decision at the actual hearing.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move that a special meeting of the board be held at a time and place to be set by the administrative law judge, at which time the board will discuss and act upon the contemplated discharge of Ronnie Marcellet from her current contract for conduct on becoming a teacher in subordination and or failure to perform contracted duties without justification, that the business manager provide written notice of this action to Ronnie Marcellet so that we can move forward with this hearing.
Okay, so the motion on the floor by
This
Mr.
man.
Swindle, is there a second to that motion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Swindle, second by Ross. Okay, any further discussion on this?
So just to get a clear understanding of it now, we're gonna discuss this at a later meeting? Is that what's gonna happen?
This is the process when you go to contemplate a teacher or administrator.
Right, so there will be a meeting in the future that there will be an actual hearing, and you guys will be able to hear all the evidence from both sides and then make an actual decision of whether to discharge her. This meeting's sole purpose is whether to contemplate her discharge, just meaning starting the process, getting an administrative law judge, setting it up for the procedural parts of the scheduling, and then having that hearing probably within a few weeks.
How long is your discussion just with the board?
What's that?
Is your discussion just with the board?
Just the board, yeah. Yes. Because we can't hear any other evidence that's coming out. This is basically, it's almost like getting a speeding ticket when you appear to court. And they present their side, and the school will present their side to get started. This is just a contemplated, this is the process that we go through on all teachers. Everybody that has a signed contract, ancillary staff, it's considered having employees for a chance for. But if we open it up for discussion and stuff, and like you said, it's not fair to listen to our state or everybody else in this room. And anybody that, if they're approached by it, and say their side of what happened and all that stuff, like, it's up to them, they have to recuse themselves.
Basically, now a date will just have to be set up.
A date will be set.
And we gotta vote first.
Yeah, we gotta vote first.
I have a question. So she's still under contract, this should be paid public hearing, correct?
No, that's
Not
the next one.
necessarily, that
It's
comes
up to
up
the
next.
board. They can make a motion to suspend with pay or without pay.
So this is just strictly just for, to move forward to get the hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this?
If we don't pass this motion, what happens?
Nice.
I'm sorry?
If we don't pass this motion, what happens? She said so.
Not exactly sure. I suppose she would stay on administrative leave, and we'd have to brainstorm what to do with her.
Basically, that's all, this is the second hearing. That's all the evidence. Any further discussion on this? Not, I'll ask for roll call, Connie?
Okay. Ross?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Dr. Wanda?
Yes.
Alan S.
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes,
Terry,
No.
Alan,
Yes. Okay, no further business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Kurt.
No, we still have.
Oh, hold on,
We still have a.
there's
second part.
one other part to this. So I'll petition the Office of Administrative Hearings since the motion passed to appoint an administrative law judge. They'll set the time and place of the hearing. You guys will all get information and we'll try to coordinate with everyone's schedules. Once the administrative law judge sets the hearing, the business manager should provide notice of that to Ms. Marcellet, and I can assist with that. Then a list of charges is going to be provided to Ms. Marcellet and the ALJ, and then the board will have to post notice of the hearing date and time, and I can assist with all of that. But the next thing on the agenda as part of this is a possible executive session pursuant to 15.1, 15.10 regarding potential suspension. That item has to occur in executive session per law unless both the board and the individual agree that the matter may be addressed in the presence of others. I always recommend for the protection of the individual that the board goes into executive session for this. So I would request a motion to go into executive session pursuant to North Dakota Century Code 15.1, 15.10 regarding potential suspension.
Is she allowed to stay in the room while we're in, executive session?
I'm sorry, Terry, I can't hear you.
Is she allowed to stay in the room while we're in executive session if we're discussing her?
Yes, if Ronnie is there, she would be allowed to stay in the room.
Okay. I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Okay, motion made by Terry to go into executive session.
Now, what about me because I'm not there face to face and I'm virtually? So am I, and we'll go through part of the executive session. Okay.
Is there a second to Terry's motion? Second by Ross. Roll call, Connie. Executive session at 5:31 PM. That's everyone else to leave except for Mr. Marshall.
Need to vote on the motion, don't we?
Yeah, you guys don't have to leave. No, but you only wanted to say if you go into executive session. You just say strictly,
Okay.
everybody else has to.
Or if I'm 297 board member.
No.
So the same thing.
Okay.
just give us a second, we're trying to get our equipment done. So, I just need a second.
Travis.
Yeah, I gotta finish setting up her thing here real quick.
Stop recording, start recording.
Sorry.
It's okay, everything.